Okay, hey y'all. This is me in all my glory. No makeup, coronavirus, self quarantine. Um, what I want to do is I want to start giving y'all um, a little insight into what my world is like with with my art now. A little backstory. I'm just going to be brief, but I was a high school counselor. I have my PhD in counseling and supervision. I worked for 15 years at a local high school as a high school counselor. I was 50 years old. Life was grand. My lifetime hobby was riding horses, and I loved to compete. I would compete in horse shows, jumping, hunter jumper. I'm making a very long story short. At 50 years old, which was 3.5 years ago, I had the horse of a lifetime. I had my dream horse. My riding was my therapy. It was my church. It was my escape from, any kind of trials and tribulations in my life. And I had been riding on and off my whole life. My body is beat up. I have probably the body and the bones of maybe, I don't know, a 70-year-old. I've had a lot of breaks, a lot of bumps, a number of concussions, but it was my life, and I was living my dream. I had, like I said, the perfect horse. He was I'm a big woman. I'm tall, not big, but I'm tall. I'm 5'10", and he made me look tiny. He was huge, and he was training me. He knew so many things, and he came from the Auburn University equestrian team. That's an aside. But anyway, in October of 2016, 3.5 years ago, I was getting ready to show and getting ready to I was at a show in Conyers, Georgia, which is about 2 hours from here. I live in Auburn, Alabama. And I was schooling him basically on the Friday before this show started on Saturday. You go up with your team. I had a whole crew of, girls from my barn, and we had about 8 different horses that we took up, and my 2 trainers were in the ring with me, and I was just gonna practice going over. This is my Apple pencil. I'm just kind of poking myself with it. I was just gonna go over the jumps and the routine that I was gonna do the next day, and the ring that I was gonna be working in. It's just to give you a chance to, get your horse familiar with the surroundings and all that. It was at the Olympic Equestrian Center in Conyers, Georgia. And I took one jump, I think it was the second jump, lost my balance. Totally my fault. He did nothing. He took a little stutter step before a jump, which often happens, and I lost my balance and I fell, which has happened a lot, and I just happened to land the wrong way and I broke my neck. When I landed, I was face down, and the first thing I wanted to do was move my arm. My left arm was blocking my vision. I tried to move it, and I couldn't move anything but from my neck down, so I was paralyzed from the neck down. And my 2 trainers were there, and anyway, I'll probably go into that a little more as I get familiar with these videos, but I broke my neck, and I had to be taken by an ambulance to the Atlanta Medical Center. They have a level 1 trauma center, and they were able to put me back together basically. I have rods and cages in my neck. I had to have surgery from the front and from the back. And I was in ICU on a ventilator for 5 days, and then the total hospital stay was almost 3 weeks. But from C5 to T2, which is the thoracic second vertebrae going down, I'm fused. And then, so my surgeon said I had responded properly, and I had all the, strength in my hands and my wrist movements in both hands. I was going to make a 100% recovery, which was, a miracle. And the reason that I had been paralyzed was when I fell, I actually dislocated my neck, and it's called a jump. Basically, my vertebrae jumped and pinched off my spinal cord, which temporarily paralyzed me from the neck down. So thank God that was just temporary, and I was able to, recover. Came home, had a neck brace. I had to have it's called a Miami J neck brace for 3 months, 24/7. Sleeping 24/7. That was my, that was part of my anatomy for that 3 months. Couldn't drive, of course couldn't work. So I just had to recover, heavily medicated, and then within that time period, I was also doing a lot of OT and PT, occupational therapy, for my right arm and my right hand, because after surgery I had no strength at all in my right arm, like my tricep. I couldn't even do this at all. If I tried to do this, I would just basically punch myself in the face. So I went to OT and PT 3 times a week for about 2 years, and after about 2 or 3 weeks, I was doing OT with a hand specialist. Mallory is her name. And Mallory started to recognize that something was not right. And I had already recognized that something was not right with my hand. Let's see, I'll flip this around. And I have a picture up on my screen. That's the one I'm going to work on. So let me turn this off for a second. There we go. So if you can see, let's see. If you can see my hand, being able to do this is 2 years of intense therapy. I've lost that muscle in between my thumb and my first finger. When I was first doing occupational therapy, this thumb was extremely painful. I mean, if you touched it with a feather, it just was extremely painful. I could not extend my fingers at all. Like right now I'm doing that. I couldn't do that at all. So, I couldn't scratch my dogs. It just was like I would have to use my wrist movement to do anything. I can't hold a pencil and write effectively. I can do like do a restaurant tab and a tip and all that. And then I can definitely sign my name, but as far as writing, taking notes, any prolonged writing, no, it's not going to happen. It's terrible. So this right arm and hand is, I have lasting permanent nerve damage. And then in both arms and both hands, I have pretty severe I have pretty severe neuropathy, which means just basically nerve pain. I have to take this medicine called Lyrica, which is a blessing and a curse. It helps with the nerve pain, but it has all kinds of different side effects. Dry mouth. So right now I'm having like dry mouth. It happens all the time, especially if I'm trying to talk. So I always have water. Fatigue, extreme fatigue. So I sleep a lot, which I mean, that's I'm accustomed to that now. Lots of different side effects, and I've had to decrease my dose because I was at the highest dose of Lyrica for a spinal cord injury, and it was making me, I was unable to speak coherently. I was having like a stutter. It still happens every once in a while, but it was at the point where I just would kind of shut down because I knew that my speech was impaired, and I thought I didn't connect it to the Lyrica. I really thought that something neurological was going on, like I was developing symptoms of MS or ALS or Parkinson's. I didn't know what the crap was happening, and I was having muscle contractions or muscle spasms, and that was affecting my speech. It was just a whole list of symptoms, and I could not figure it out. So, process of elimination, I started kind of decreasing different drugs that I was taking, different medications to see if that was it. And after about 3 months of doing that, kind of my own research with my own self and my own medication, I figured out that it was Lyrica. And so I have a pain management specialist doctor, and he and I discussed this all along the way, and we decided to try to decrease my dose, and my speech got better. So that's what, that's what made me realize that that was definitely the problem. So that's gotten better. Okay, so these are my issues. So I had to retire with disability at the age of 50 from a job that I loved and hated. But that was my job. That was my world. I worked with high school students. I loved working with the students. I hated dealing with the parents, but that was just part of the job. I loved my coworkers. We laughed. I mean, it was just, I loved my coworkers. And so that was suddenly a change. And then also, I had to stop writing. With my hand being the way it is, and then my neck, it's just too much. There'd be too much to lose if something happened, and my family members would absolutely kick my ass if I tried to ride. Which, I mean, I dream about it all the time, and I wake up thinking in my head, I can do this now. And then it takes a minute for everything to sink in and for me to remember, oh, can't do that, you can't do that. So that's something that was absolutely devastating to me, way more so than having to stop working. The riding lifestyle, showing, going on, the trips with the girls, and I mean, I just loved that. I loved that. That was my lifetime hobby, and I was living the dream as far as I was at a point in my life where I could afford high-end stuff, saddles and bridles and the horse of my dreams and just all the stuff that goes along with owning a horse and riding, like riding attire, like boots and jackets and show stuff, all that. I was living my best life. And then I had the accident. So, oh, I dropped my Apple Pencil. Oh, I got it. I drop shit all the time. Excuse my language. So, after about 2 years of sitting in this chair, this is my recliner, got like a cover on it because it's leather and it's cold. So, this is my recliner. This is my living room. Very important part of my world is right there. That's my dog, Belle. She's snoring, so if you hear her snoring, she's very old, so she is kind of going blind. She's completely deaf, but she's part of our family. I'll go into that later as far as my family, but so anyway, that was 3.5 years ago. Life changed dramatically. After about 2.5 years, I was like, okay, God, what's next? Am I just going to sit here for however long my life is and I just didn't know. I knew that God had a plan for me. I have faith in that. But I was at a low point. I was questioning my faith. I just didn't have a sense of usefulness or purpose. I have 2 kids. They were out of the house. They were in college. I was basically alone, and my husband, not alone. I mean, my husband, who was wonderful. He was still working, so he would come home and basically I would sit here. I was doing Pilates, so I was getting some exercise, and I still do. Well, we're in the coronavirus right now, so everything's different, but I was trying to take care of myself, but I was at a place where it was just a low point, and I'm not going to say I was suicidal, but it did cross my mind a bunch, but it was more of an anxiety thing. Like, what if I get so low that's what I mean, those were the thoughts. And so I knew I was in a dark place. I had seen a counselor on and off to help me with this transition of this new normal. So somehow, and I can't remember how it happened, I came across this coloring app called Pigment. And I was thinking, you know what? Because I couldn't color. I had this really nice set of colored pencils and adult coloring books that my mother and my husband had given me after my accident. And I'm pretty artistic. I've always known that. My mom's an artist. And so I have the artistic eye. So I would start to try to color in these coloring books, and I would just get pissed off because I couldn't hold the pencil I couldn't have enough force and to color effectively and the way I wanted to do it. So I would just get mad and put it away. But I came across this coloring app on my iPad where I could color, and I was thinking, that might be a little therapeutic for me to do that. So I started doing that, and that was about 9 months ago. And within a couple of weeks, it's also a social media app. So you can post your work and then you can get feedback, and there's galleries that you can go and look at. And I started seeing that other people, a relatively smaller group of other artists on there, were actually doing freehand work on this app and publishing it. And I didn't know how they were doing that. I was like, how do you get a blank canvas? So I started asking questions, and they told me how to do it. And from that point, I did my first freehand. It was a picture of Leo Tolstoy, he's a writer, and he was just a neat looking older man. He did Anna Karenina and another book that's really famous that I can't think of right now, which is embarrassing, but Lyrica. I blame Lyrica on short-term memory and concussions too. I've had a lot of concussions. Anyway, so I figured out how to do a freehand art on this app. Tuck that back there. And from that point, my work just kind of took off. And once I started doing freehand versus just coloring other, like, grayscale pictures or pictures that are on Pigment that you can color, I started getting like the best encouragement and support from the Pigment community, and the kindest comments, and people would just, they were just so encouraging and supportive and inspiring. And so I don't have really anything to do except do that. So I was just I can do it really fast. That's my gift, is once this part of me took off, this artistic part of me took off, it was like I realized the speed is my personal gift. Like I can, somebody, for example, a friend of mine might have lost an animal, a pet, a dog, and they would give me a photograph of the dog, and I would paint a picture of it for them, and it was very meaningful to them. Lots of stuff like that happened, and that provided me with the sense of purpose and usefulness for the first time in like 3 years since my accident. And so it's just taken off. And so what I've done is, recently, since the coronavirus, I've wanted to do this for a while, but I've developed or created my own YouTube channel, and I'm trying to figure out how to do tutorials on there about my artwork. So that's what I'm doing, and that's why I'm going to post this video to give folks a little bit of background and insight into what I do. Oh, because, here's the because. Let me turn this around. So, I'm sitting here in my recliner. Those are my toes. So I have an iPad Pro. Oops, sorry. I have an iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil. Okay. So here's my hand, and here's my hand, and here's my Apple Pencil. Looks like I'm shooting the bird, I know, but I can't hold a regular pencil or pen and have the fine motor skills that it takes to write or paint normally, but I can use my Apple Pen. I can hold it in a way and use the app called Pigment so I can paint. and I can draw, and I have access here to all the colors in the rainbow. Let me go here. Let me go to Pigment. Let me go to my work. Published work. So these are the last few things that I've done. You can see, I mean, I have published in 9 months' time 347 pieces of art. So it's pretty much one a day. One a day. So very prolific, if that's the word. Is that the word? I'm thinking it is. You know, and what I'll do is I get a photograph of something that moves me, something that I like, typically animals. I love animals. I love doing portraits of animals. But this is Belle. That's when she was younger. But that's my old dog that's over there snoring like an old person. So I'll get a picture of something and draw it, paint it, whatever. So what I'm going to try to do is show my process. People are always asking me, I say, this is an example. This dog was a friend of mine that I went to high school with. His name was Moose. His real name was Mortimer Phineas, but they called him Moose. And he lived, it's a German Shepherd. He lived to be 14, and then he passed away. And so I wanted to do a portrait of him. This was the last photograph that she took of him. Not this is a painting. But I wanted to do something for her. And so I did this portrait of Moose, of the last picture that she took of him. And she had it put on a canvas. And I mean, it's meaningful. You know, it's meaningful to her, which makes me happy. Here's another one. This is a dog. It was an emotional support dog of my mother's priest, and he actually is still living. He's 14 years old, but he's declining, and his name is Nick. So they sent me a number of photographs. I picked one that I liked and did a portrait and sent it to them, and they love it. It's meaningful. So when that happens, it's meaningful to me. Most of the things that I do are because I want to do them. Like this beautiful Frisian stallion. I mean, when you have a subject like that, all I'm doing is making a copy of the subject. All of my work is completely freehand. It's basically I go to my work. I tap this little icon right here. It's like a little turn down page, and it gives me a blank canvas. I can come over here and I can figure out what kind of medium I want to use. I have pencil, I have pastels, I have paintbrush, and there goes Belle. She has night terrors, and she doesn't even wake up. She just jumps up and just runs. She does it all day long. She's done that since she was little, so I don't know what the heck a dog can have night terrors about. That's living the life of Riley, but technical pen, blender, blur, airbrush, watercolor. The one I typically use to begin is watercolor. The first thing that I normally do is I'll pick the background color. I mean, I can do, you know, you have access to all of these different things. I can do a fade. So say I want to do a background color of some purples. I can pick a purple. I can go like that. Another purple. Then go like that. I can go over here to color wheel. I can pick a blue. Let's say we want a blue coming in. Let's say we want to go back with the whatever that color is. Let's say we want to move it around, do a little weird. I mean, you can do whatever background you want. So this one is kind of cool. Anyway, so that would be a background. Then I would go to whatever medium I would want to use to paint with. I typically start with watercolor. I can change the opacity so that basically the strength of the color. With the watercolor, I usually start low because it's pretty strong. I'm going to use it like a bigger brush. The brush size, you can have a big brush size, a little brush. I mean, so I'm constantly moving these little things around. And then I'll pick my color, what I want to use. And since I have kind of a dark background, I'm just showing this. I don't even have anything I'm thinking to do. I'm going to use like a white. And let me bring that horse picture up again. So basically I go up like this. I find my pictures. I bring that up. I have a split screen. See, I had it in favorites. Okay, there it is. See that picture? Okay, so I'm going to move. Let's see. It's hard to do this with one hand. So I really am kind of one-handed. One-handed, left-handed basically now. All right, so let's see if I can just show what I typically start out doing. Okay. So the horse is white basically. So I got white over here as from my color wheel. And what I typically do is, and I'm just going to show, I can't really do that because that makes me, I can't see the, okay. Let's see if I can do this like this. Okay, so I typically just kind of show what this, get the white background back. There we go. What this horse is, you know, the main shape of the horse is going to kind of look like. His head's coming down here. And the thing about pigment, and the thing that I think a lot of people struggle with freehand work, is trying to make it perfect. And the thing I love about pigment is you have an undo button right here. So if there's something that I want, if there's something I do and I don't like it, I hit undo. I have completely redone, you know, a half a side of a face before, because I've gotten to the end of it and I've been like, you know what, that nose isn't right, that eye isn't right, I gotta fix that. And I can, because you can do that in pigment. You can fix things that aren't right. So I'm changing the color a little bit. I'm putting some dark. And now I'm doing some gray. Because his nose has got a lot of gray in it. Typically what I'll use is the left side of whatever color is the main subject. So the main subject here is white. So I'll use white but it's really not white. It's like a light, light blue. And then I'll use anything over in this area for shading and things like that. So I'm going to do a gray now because he's got some gray in his nose. He's got some gray in his body right here. Some gray in his mane coming out to the side. And then some dark, some black right here. I'm going to get a smaller brush. And I'm going to, you see his eyes right here? I mean, not his eyes, well, his eyes too, but his ears. I'm going to put a little bit of black in the ears. Put a little bit of black where his eyes are. A little bit of, I guess, gray over here would be better. Gray coming down the middle of his face. I'm changing the opacity, however you say it, to lower so I can do some work on the face without it being really strong colors. And all I'm doing right now is I'm just getting the basic shape of this beautiful horse in here. So he's turned, he's got some beautiful angles in his neck and the muscles. That's the one thing I think I love. Well, I love everything about horses, but one of the main things is their strength and their power and their musculature, and they're just such a beautiful, exquisite creature. So what I do as an artist is I don't create anything. I take a picture of God's creation or nature's creation, however you want to look at it, and I copy it. That's all I do. I don't take credit for any of this. I know that, a lot of people can't do this and they consider it a gift, and so that's why I try to share with people this gift, and I do recognize it as a gift. So I'm just getting a basic kind of feel of the horse. With watercolor. Watercolor to me is a good thing to start out with because it's fuzzy. You can get my goal at the beginning is simply just, and let me see, I'm gonna look at this, simply just to get the main features set in the picture with the right, the proper perspective. So like the eyes are in the right position, and the nose and the neck, because this horse isn't very complicated. It's just a horse's head, mane, neck, and part of its back. So I'm just trying to get all of those things proportionally correct. And I like the black background that's in the actual photograph. This one it's just going to have this background because I don't know why I did this background like this, but I might go in and darken it up because I want the white horse to stand out a little bit. But I don't know. We'll see. I never know what's going to happen. So I'm I'm doing my horse. And it's a lot of tap, tap, taps. I'm not talking right now because I can't really multitask too well. But I'm trying, and I'll get better at it as I go along. Usually I'm just very quiet while I'm doing this. I stay up till wee hours of the morning. My hours are very strange, and for a while I was trying to correct them, but then I was like, why? I mean, there's no reason for me to have normal hours, and in the middle of the night it's so quiet and peaceful, and that's when I'm able to, that's when I'm able to do the work that I like to do. So I'm not worried about it anymore, but I do stay up till wee hours of the morning. Usually have like HGTV on or CNN or something in the background. So lately I've been learning about the coronavirus situation, so I have it on CNN. But sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's just quiet, and I like that too. For those of you that know me on Pigment, on the Pigment app, on the social media, you know that my mother was recently diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. It's metastasized in her bones. And so she has recently moved in with me and my husband. And it happened literally the week before all hell broke loose with the coronavirus, and Auburn University closed. So my daughter Kira moved back in, and then AUM closed. So my son Keegan moved back in kind of half-time. He's half here and half in Montgomery, which is where his work is. And they're still working. He works at a country club in the golf section, the golf part of a country club. So I'm just amazed that they're still working, but they are. And of course my mom is quarantined because she's got cancer, but she's not afraid of getting the coronavirus. I mean, she's not afraid of stage 4 cancer. So anyway, the living situation here has gotten a little weird, a little out of control for us. I mean, we're very fortunate we have the space to accommodate, my mom and my daughter and my son. But at first it was just my mom and myself and my husband, and we thought that's the way it was going to be. And then life happened. It's like they say, man plans and God laughs, and that's pretty much what happened. So right now you see I'm just getting the basic shape and perspective of this photograph. I'm going to pause it right now because I don't know where I'm going from here, and I'll be back in a little bit.